Okay, so welcome everybody, and it's great to have you with us, both those that are with us in person and also those who are watching the recording. Looking at discovering your executive mojo today, and this is all about gaining confidence and authority in your new executive role. So first of all, just a little bit about me. Right, so I'm South African by birth and heritage. I live in the UK now. And just a little bit about what's behind me. I have a master's in coaching and behavioral change. I'm credentialed through the European Mentoring and Coaching Council Global. And I'm also a chartered fellow of the CIPD, which is the British equivalent of SHRM SCP. So I write for various magazines and journals and publications as well. And so what can you expect from today? Well, the first thing is connection. You're going to connect today with new people that you ordinarily wouldn't cross paths with, and you're going to learn at least one new concept that you didn't know before. You can expect to participate, engage, co-create new awarenesses with everybody else that's here, with this group. And then also to take away something that you can implement immediately, and hopefully that you can put into practice as soon as you off the call. So congratulations. It's taken quite a bit for you to get here, hasn't it? Yeah. So landing the role that you're in is recognition and it's validation of your success. If you're like most new executives, it's a combination of both exciting and nerve-wracking. And it's probably the biggest gap between the rungs on the ladder, is the gap between being a manager and being an executive, because the whole landscape changes. Feels a bit like you're in the spotlight, like everybody's watching you, and they are. And that can be really intimidating at times. So now that you're in this role and the whole landscape has changed and the ground's perhaps feeling a bit shaky under your feet, well, that's why you're here. But to have got this far, you have already shown that you've got what it takes. You're able to adapt, you've grown, and this is just another one of those opportunities. The difference now is that alongside the new learning, you're also having to unlearn many of the concepts that got you here, that have really supported you so far. So what are the typical confidence gaps that we see? Well, first one, self-doubt. You start to second guess yourself, start to hold back. Fear of judgment. So getting a non-committal response in a meeting, and then that little voice starts and you wonder what they're thinking about you, and do they think that you haven't got it, that you haven't grasped it? Do they think you're silly? Yeah. Just a quick stat that's quite an interesting one. Did you know that women on average will not speak up in a meeting unless they are 85% sure of what it is that they'll say? Yeah. Men, on the other hand, are very happy to speak up if they're 15% sure. They'll just talk. But women really want to be sure that they're not going to be adversely judged. And truth be told, you're probably more likely to be judged for staying silent than you are for speaking out. So when things aren't going to plan, and sometimes even when they are going to plan, you wonder if it's just luck that got you there. Perhaps you're just filling a quota, and there's this sneaky little voice that sits in your head, wherever it may be in your head, whispering, or sometimes it's shouting, but you're not up to it really. And at some point, somebody is going to find out. So what's your experience been? And invite you to put in the chat if you've experienced that. Just put a yes in the chat. Yeah. And while you're doing that, I'm just going to move on to the whole point of our executive lab today, which is to give you some strategies to really discover your executive mojo, to get yourselves out of the traps of losing confidence at the worst possible times and being able to really step up and take your place. We're going to give you some gems today. We're going to need to move pretty fast because we've got lots to cover. And then we're going to pack 3 strategies all into that. And my intention then is that you're going to leave this event with some powerful actions and insights that you'll be able to use to make an immediate difference. Because that's what we do. We support transitioning executives like you, rather than having to figure it out for yourself, or better or for worse. You can actually have a whole support team journey with you. That means you're never alone. And that just takes the worst of the stress away. It makes it fun. So unpacking imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is crippling. You've got to get it under control and be the one that's in charge. It's a bit like puppy training. You know, the puppy will take over if you don't show it who's in control. And managing imposter syndrome is not very different. So just some facts about it. It affects pretty much everybody in one way or another. 70% of people have reported suffering from it. In the workplace, it tends to be more high achievers from underrepresented backgrounds. Women and people of color may be more likely to feel that they don't fit in, that they're not welcome, that they don't belong, and then to start doubting their skills and their achievements, or fearing that they might be exposed, or telling themselves that, you know, whatever it was that they've just been complimented on, well, anybody can do it. I just got lucky. I'm not especially talented. And we tell ourselves these stories. So imposter syndrome is a really broad topic, and there's a lot more to it. But for now, we're actually going to have just one powerful way that you can manage it. So before we get into that, I'm going to ask you to stop and reflect for a moment. What are the attributes that got you this far? Those inner qualities. You know, maybe just even bear them in mind or make a note of them. Because the fact is, you still have them. Think about how you overcame challenges before, and certainly in your previous role, you had your fair share of challenges. You've overcome them. That's your proof that you can. And all the different times in your life that you've had to quickly learn something new. And anybody who's a parent will have experienced that. You suddenly get this baby in your arms, and you've got no previous baby experience, right? So it's not unlike that. That's what life does. It gives us these challenges, these new challenges to work with. And moving into an executive role is just another one of those. So how do we change it? And I'm going to invite you now to work with me on this one. You're bound to encounter people that are going to trigger it for you, who take pleasure in pointing out ways that you don't measure up. Sometimes you might be that person. So here's a way to manage it, and I hope that you'll join me in this. So if you just sit deeply in your chair, close your eyes or look up at the ceiling, and just think about that voice in your head that pops up. Whose voice is it? Is it perhaps a parent or a critical teacher, perhaps? Maybe a boss at some point in your journey? Might even be your own voice. Which side do you hear it on? Your left side or your right side? Maybe right in the middle? What's its tone like? Is it loud, soft? Is it monotone, or does it tend to change? How does your body feel when you hear it? What happens to your breathing, or your heart rate? Then give it a volume dial. You can dial it right up. So imagine this voice is shouting at you. And then dial it down, so it's just a whisper. Change the voice. Imagine the voice now as the voice of a cartoon character. Maybe it's high-pitched, like Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony. Maybe it's got a lip like Daffy Duck. Give it a funny name that makes you smile. Now move it to a different part of your body. How about your baby toe? What does this voice sound like from your baby toe? And now allow it to just gently fade out. And when you're ready, open your eyes again, come back into the room. Yeah. So how was that? And I invite you to come off mute, and yeah, how did you experience that?
It was quite interesting. This, just to have different voice and pitches, and that it's only your imagination that could have such an impact.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is it Henna? Henna? How do I pronounce Henna? Yeah. Yeah, Henna, you're quite right. It is just your imagination.
Yeah, I'm happy to go as well. So I found it, first it was like actually lots of different voices, like kind of, and then I turned it into like a Mr. Blobby figure, and it was like, just zoning it out, like, it doesn't mean anything. I actually found it quite interesting doing that, to be honest. I was like, and like paying attention to where is it in my head, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's actually on the left side. Why that is? So it got me thinking.
For me, it was interesting that when I stopped resisting the voice, it was not nearly as powerful. I find when I push back against it, it persists, right? What we resist persists. But I named mine Judge Judy, like the Judy, and then it was just kind of funny because there she is again, right?
Yeah. All right, so one thing about the voice, if you feed it to nourish it, it's going to grow. And in a way, it's really just your ego that wants to help you in a very strange way. Its intention is good. It wants to protect you. And you can just say, no, thanks. Actually, I've got this. I don't need you to take over. I've got it. And just remind yourself, imposter syndrome's not real. It's actually just an illusion, a cunning illusion. And you've just experienced that. Yeah. So practice with it, and you'll find it does become easier and easier if you just take a few seconds every day and practice moving it around and changing its tone, and it soon becomes at your mercy rather than you being at its mercy. Yeah. All right, so moving on then, communicating with impact, and this is a lot to do with executive presence, and I'm going to touch on executive presence through this as well. A lot of communication, not only being about executive presence, is actually about active listening, and a lot of active listening is about not saying much. So a few tips for that. First of all, look behind the words for the non-verbal cues that are being used. And there are only cues. We call it body language, but it's not a language really because we can't interpret it. So if somebody's sitting there like this, we might interpret it as being disengaged, but actually maybe they're just comfortable and listening really intently. So we don't know. We don't know why people use their bodies and their expressions in the way that they do. It's just data. And there's only one way to find out. That's to ask. Yeah. But not to interpret and then attribute something to somebody that isn't really there. Another thing that you can do is put yourself in the other person's shoes. So just imagine for a moment that you're in their position, that you're on the receiving end of whatever the conversation is that you're having with them. And it's quite a powerful way then of actually pretending that you are them receiving the information, of experiencing it from their shoes. Again, you'll never be able to exactly know what's going on for them, but it could perhaps give you some information that would help you to adapt your communication style to be more receptible by the other person. Ask questions, ask lots of questions, be curious, and seek to understand. And this is one area where you do speak, but you speak to ask, not to tell. And then at the appropriate times as well, be absolutely comfortable stating your opinions. Speaking clearly, and this touches on the executive presence again, speak clearly, be articulate. So remember that 85-15 rule. Well, it's not a rule, it's a stat, and it's a stat we actually really want to get rid of. They're unlikely to be judging you, especially if it's a room full of men. They're unlikely to be judging you. They would expect you to be speaking up. So when you speak up, be articulate, be firm about what you say. Leave out words like I think, I feel, and just go straight in. Just say what it is that you mean. Don't be hesitant, perhaps, maybe. State your opinion and stand by it, own it. And manage that voice. Send it to your baby toe or wherever it went. So next up, we've got a great model for establishing your authentic executive presence. And at the corner of it, at the center of it all, is confidence, because that's what it's about. Yeah. And confidence in this context, I'll describe as being a sense of being grounded, feeling grounded and stable in your body. Bringing in authority. Now, authority is what you bring with you from your past. So it's all of your qualifications, your experience, your skills, everything that you know, that's all with you. That's what makes you credible. And that's why you're in the position, in the executive position you're in now, because that's been appreciated. So stand in your authority, own it. Bring with you all that great stuff that you spent a lot of time working on. That now leads us into presence. And presence is the here and now. And presence is how you show up to the people around you. So if I show you a physical way of being able to describe it, authority goes this way, down through your body into the ground. It grounds you. Presence goes out to the people around you. And that's the here and now. That's what you're bringing to the current meeting, the current situation, the current conversation. And then the third one is impact. And impact, the action for it is out, because that's going out into the organization, into the world. That's your contribution to make it better, make it more successful through your unique presence, your authority, and what you've got to bring. So we usually have one area where we're less strong than the other two. So we're going to play a bit with it. And we've got pairs here. So Danny, I'm going to invite you just for a couple of...
Yes, a quick question, Barbara. I'm sorry. Can you say again what you meant by presence is, okay, impacts this way, presence. What is presence again?
Presence is around. It's around.
Okay.
It's how we touch the people around us.
Thank you.
How they experience us. Yeah. And impact. And the model itself, we call the API model. Yeah. So we bring with us our authority, our presence, and the impact we're here to make. And all of those are components of our confidence. Okay, so we're going to do a really quick exercise, and this will just be a quick one where you can get to meet different people as well. It's only 5 minutes. I'm going to put you into pairs, into breakout rooms, and you'll have person A and person B. Person A, without saying anything to person B, because you don't know them, just say to them, Kenya, if it's okay with you, I'm going to ask you to put your video on, because it's going to be, once you get into the breakout room, it'll be really difficult for your partner to make that call with just saying the H of your name. But person A will say to person B, wow, from just seeing you there, seeing you on screen, this is what I think could be your strongest. Yeah. And person B can do the same. And then maybe just have a conversation between yourselves, just a very quick conversation between yourselves about which you think is your strongest and why, and the one that you would like to work on more. Very quick, 5 minutes. Welcome back. So what did you discover?
So for me, I discovered that, you know, so I was thinking the one that is most like me, I think, is presence. It's the feedback that I get the most, and that was confirmed by Lisa. And a lot of what I want to work on is the impact. A lot of those issues I'm stopping them myself. It is me, it's that imposter syndrome, and that is what is stopping me, like feeling like I'm giving an impact. Which I found interesting.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Claire. Colleen?
Yeah, it was fascinating. Sorry, we kind of were talking so much, we got bounced out the room and we didn't finish our conversation. Fascinating conversation. And what I discovered also is this impact piece, and it's only kind of, I'm thinking about it now that it is future focused. So I value presence, and somehow I'm keeping myself present and being present, but maybe at the risk of the future focus and understanding the impact.
Great. So we'll move on then to our next part, number 3, because we promised you 3. And so leading former peers, and this one is one that really trips a lot of people up when they first move into their executive roles, because the whole relationship has to change. And it's awkward. Claire, I see you nodding there. It is. So what can you do to bring your former peers on side? And it's especially awkward if somebody in your team was also hoping for the position that you got, and there's perhaps a little bit of disappointment there, perhaps it's even stronger than that. What can you do to bring them on side? So, well, the first part is to establish authority without rank. So authority being that groundedness that you bring, confidence in, well, I earned this position through my knowledge, my skills, and everything that I've brought. So you don't need to apologize for it. At the same time, to respect where the other person's coming from, empathize with them, and just communicate really clearly. You might want to co-create the outcomes that you're wanting from your team and from each person in your team, bearing in mind that your team is likely a team of managers as well. So they're all people that are perhaps leading their own teams or with their own responsibilities. So involve them in what the outcomes are that you want for your team, for your role, for your part of the business. And we've got a couple of ways that you can do that. We've got the STAR technique, which is the situation, task, action, result, most often used in interviews, but it works well here. The other one that I really like to use, and I think it's slightly different, and it really engages the imagination of the person that you're talking to, or the team that you're talking to. The usual value equation, that the input, output, outcome, but we add another part on the end, and this talks to the impact as well. It's the value created. So who are we as a team here to serve? And it could be, we could be serving stakeholders within the business or without, or externally, or both. So who are we here to serve, or what's the value we want to create for them? If we're going to create the value, what do we need to be doing, and how do we need to be doing it? And as the leader of a team of people who are really good at what they do, ask them to come up with it, ask them to create it, because that way you can start to get more ownership. Yeah. And then the third thing that you can do, you've already been very transparent about how you're feeling, that it's a bit awkward for you as well as for them, but just to express your commitment to them and their development and their progression, and really mean it and do it. Yeah? If they really feel that you've got their career and their best interests at heart, you're likely to go further with them. Okay, so moving on then onto the bridge model. So the bridge model is our model. We created it for new executive transitioning. And this is how we work with the clients we work with, both when we're working with them collectively and individually. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to turn my head because I've got a big screen here and I can see it better on my screen than I can just on the little thing that I've got in the middle. So the bridge model, moving from the bottom where you've been very operationally focused, you've had tasks that you're accountable for that your manager or your line manager typically has passed down. So you know what those tasks are. You can typically assign accountability. You bear the ultimate accountability, but within your team, you may have team members that would do various things, and execution. So making sure that they get done. So for an operational manager, it's very concrete, very adaptive. You've been told, you've been given what you need to do, and it's up to you to go and make it happen. When you move into executive management, it changes. The whole thing gets flipped on its lid, and now it becomes a lot more ambiguous, and things happen because you're now solving for the whole organization, not just for one part of it. You're needing to adapt to whatever may be happening within the organization or outside of it. So thinking here immediately, COVID or a sudden unexpected war that might have an impact. And things are going to happen in today's world. Things are going to happen. And your role then is to be the one who leads the adapting for your team. You have to be able to adapt to changing situations all the time. Very much more systemic. So remembering the impact that you're going to have as an executive, you're now solving for the whole organization. So anything that you're doing is going to need to be with the rest of the organization in mind, and also with your stakeholders, your external stakeholders in mind. So not just looking downwards at one team, but now looking upwards at how this impacts everybody and what that means for the company. So you'll be taking the company vision or purpose, the company strategy, and ensuring that the strategy for your part of the business aligns with the broader organizational strategy. Yeah. And then the tactical imperatives. Have you got what you need in terms of people, technology, equipment? Yeah. And making sure that your people have got what they need to be able to go and execute their tasks. So it's a very different way of thinking, and it's going to require you to step up in very different ways. And so we call with the bridge between the two, from being very operationally focused to being far more systemic, executive focused. We've got 5 spans to the bridge, and they're not linear spans. Each of the spans will cross over into the other spans, and they can interweave in any way. Probably the first one, plan and prepare, would be the first one. So you're a new executive. How are you planning for your career now going forward? What are you needing to focus on first? What are your priorities? Where might your gaps be? So being able to identify that, and we've got a way of a template for you to be able to do that. Personal effectiveness is a huge one. So it's not only who you are, but it's who you are in relation to others, and how you're able to influence others, how you connect with others. How effective are you in managing your time and ensuring that you're focusing on the right things and not dipping down too much, because that can be really tempting. That's what you know. Yeah. So your personal effectiveness and how effective you are and you are becoming as a leader. There's a systemic leadership. Now, you're leading for an organization, starting to connect with your new peers, build those relationships with your new peers. The people below you, the people above you, the people around you, and the people around them. So it's how do you build that systemic thinking and start to think in terms of patterns and things that are happening in the culture of the organization and how you impact that. There's a strategic acumen, which is around the complexity thinking, decision making, the that kind of thing is around that, and that's not so much around the technical skills, finance, legal, etc., that are important, that you are going to need to know, but how do you start to identify patterns? How do you start to be able to see things that are coming from the future and prepare for them before they land on you by surprise? So that's all your strategic acumen. And then there's a stakeholder engagement, because now you're needing to build relationships across, up, down, across. And often what your stakeholders need from you won't necessarily sit comfortably together. So different stakeholders are going to have opposing needs. How do you align those? And how do you manage that? So the stakeholder engagement is really important as well. So that's what the bridge model covers, and that's how we work with the people that we're working with in executive transition coaching, and also in our Exec Confidential program. And these are the two that we've been working with today. Working with confidence is both personal effectiveness and also how you engage with others. So did you know, and this is an interesting one, almost 50% of leadership transitions within the first 2 years are considered either a disappointment or a failure. And that's across the board. That's not just women. And this is data that comes from McKinsey, and also DDI World have got very similar data. So within the first 2 years, new executives have failed to deliver the anticipated organizational or financial returns, they say. Yeah. And as women are still battling to break through the glass ceiling, the fact is that they do face the same challenges as men face, and a whole lot more besides. I'm going to read you this piece from Personnel Today, because I think I could never say it in the words that they've said it. One could argue that at the senior leader or board level, it's down to the individual to make their own transition a success. After all, they are very senior, and they put themselves forward as highly capable. In most cases, HR offer onboarding programs for those transitioning lower down the organization, but will tend not to become involved with more senior transitions. What do you think the impact of that might be? 83% of new executives who transitioned around the world feel that they are unprepared for their new roles. And the problem isn't necessarily that organizations fail to do anything. So quite often, very often, they will send somebody that they're preparing for executive leadership on an exec ed course. They might go on a program at one of the business schools. They might give them an executive coach to help prepare them. Many of them do, not all, but many of them do. And in our executive lab tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about why exec ed and even executive coaching doesn't work. It doesn't deliver the results in this context. So even if new executives have had a coach, or they've been through an exec ed program, they still feel unprepared when they land in the role. So the question that we set out to answer was, what do we do about that? What is there out there that actually can help them make that transition? What can we do to change this gap? So we embarked on a huge research project to find out what the problem is, how it's being addressed, both with quantitative and qualitative research. We found out a whole lot of information on where the gap is and what it is, and I'm addressing that tomorrow. But just in a nutshell, what we discovered was in exec ed programs, they typically concentrate, working with the bridge model, on the more technical aspects, not so much on the personal effectiveness, not so much on the relational aspects, and they are so important. In executive coaching, they concentrate on the relational aspects of it, but most executive coaches have not been executives themselves. And so they don't have the understanding of what it's like to be in that role and what's needed from the more strategic aspects and the complexity thinking. And so there's gaps on both sides. So we started to have a look at how we close those gaps. And earlier this year, we ran a pilot program to test parts of it. And I'll share some of what the pilot program, what some of the people said about it. But this is what the basics of Exec Confidential were. This is how we started to put together Exec Confidential. We took what we learned from the roundtables, what we learned from the gaps, from what we learned from the people who were on the pilot program, and put together a program which is, it's a membership, it's an annual membership that is there for women to support women in their transitions. So what it includes, we've got monthly group coaching sessions you'll have your own small cohort that you're a part of. And that cohort becomes almost like your support team. Those relationships we expect will be relationships that will be with you for life. And just through what we saw in the pilot program, and that the people that were just in that little snapshot are still engaging with each other, how important it is to have your network of people that you can turn to and bounce things off, and who can share what's worked for them. The coaching programs, the group coaching sessions, are led by an executive coach who has been an executive. So they're not conventional coaching. They're kind of a big mixture of coaching, mentoring. Sometimes there's trusted advisor. A trusted advisor will come into it. Sometimes there's some teaching and training that will come into it. But it's intended to be a forum where you engage with the real life problems that you have, and draw off each other's expertise and each other's ideas and thoughts about it. We also have a learning management system, and we've got a whole library of stuff in there, that's micro-learning modules that you can go and pop into, and you can do a 10-minute quick training on this, or you need to know more about having a difficult conversation with a team member. Well, there's something in there about it. And so you can dip into that as you want, and we've made sure it's all in small chunks, so it's easy to be able to go and get what you want when you need it. Mastermind workshops and interviews and forums with well-known executives and thought leaders and people who've been there before, and you can just tap into their expertise and their wisdom. There are a whole repository of articles and infographics and books and all sorts of other resources there as well that you can tap into. And then also really important, there's a private network for you to communicate with your coach and with the rest of your group. So this isn't only you and your group get into there. You're the only ones with access to it. You can call through there. We do use SharePoint for it or Teams for it. And it's your private network for engaging with each other. So through the program, you're going to have a trusted network. You're going to learn how to communicate at all levels, up, down, across, and to build those relationships that you're needing to build at every level. You'll have the group coaching. You're going to know, because there's a lot around this in it, how to build a high-performing, accountable team, how to get your team around you. Yeah. Find support when things go wrong that'll help you quickly get back on track. Find the time and the space to reflect, because how often do we stop to do that? And that's one of the things that, as an executive, is crucial to your success, is finding that time to really think and reflect. And that toolkit is there for you to be able to learn and integrate the new concepts. And through this all, you're going to find your own authentic leadership style, and you'll discover what it takes for you to thrive. I'm going to show a video now of one of the participants in our pilot program, and we've clipped it. It's only relevant to what she learned on our topic for today.
I'm Ann Kinsley. I'm the Senior Director for Talent Acquisition I work for a global development company that has headquartered in the US, but has offices around the world. And so lead a team of about 35 people that work globally to identify and recruit our talent for home office positions, for project roles across the company, for about 5,000 positions within our organization. So that's a wonderful question. I think the most valuable skill or lesson, and I think it actually was a lesson, which is that, that everyone to a certain degree struggles with imposter syndrome and the feeling of, that I need to be more developed, more experienced, more senior to be able to move into these roles. And so having a peer cohort who could say, I'm in the same place and I'm doing okay. And others that, frankly brought in a global perspective that doesn't have as much of the imposter syndrome as part of their sort of cultural practice. That exposure and that sort of, them saying that's not something I've ever even thought about was so helpful to sort of break out of the rut of feeling constantly like I'm a little bit behind, I'm a little bit inexperienced, to be able to say, this is first of all universal, except it's also cultural. And that just broke open a lot of sort of taboos that I had in my mind. I absolutely would. It was a wonderful experience, and I think one of the reasons why it was so impactful for me was I really appreciate the opportunity to have a peer learning network. That was wonderful, and an unexpected sort of highlight of the program for me. It was a wonderful program. It was in multi-phases. So it began with sort of homeworker readings that I found really, really useful, and that I still actually go back and refer to today. And it graduated, it tiered up as you got through topics. It was then followed by peer sessions where we got together with a cohort to talk about some of the leadership challenges we're having. Followed by an individual coaching session. And just the sequencing and the cadence of that was really wonderful, because it really sort of started where you are, you added layers, and then you could sort of finalize it with the coaching, and really sort of tie the threads together with a coaching session.
So that was Anne's experience of the pilot program. And as I said, that was just a real snapshot. So fact is, most of the successful women that I've worked with have been prepared to invest in their own development over and above what their organizations provide. And most of the people who are talking to us about joining Exec Confidential at present are probably going to be paying for themselves. Just a couple at the moment will be sponsored by the organizations. And the balance could swing. We expect it probably will swing as time goes on, but it is brand new. We're experienced. We've got a lot of experience in working at this level, but the program itself is new. So what is the next step? So as a thank you for attending, I invite you to schedule a one-to-one with me if you'd like to. And this is a discussion about your career and your concerns and your challenges. So the purpose isn't to discuss how to solve them, but rather to help you get clarity over where the real issues lie. It's often not where you think, and then what you need to be paying attention to. If it appears that there could be a fit with Exec Confidential or one of our other new executive support programs, then we'll explore that with you. But that isn't always the case. And either way, you're still going to leave with clarity on your next steps and an action plan for what to do about it. So Exec Confidential itself it's a membership platform. And because we're just launching, our fees are really competitive. We've got both annual and quarterly fees. Annual membership is by far the best value. But on top of that, we are running an extra special offer for the first 12 people who will be known as our pioneer members. And there's both an extra special joining fee for them, but they will only, for as long as they are members of Exec Confidential, will only ever pay that fee. So as we grow and we build out more, the fees will be going up. Pioneer members will always pay the same fee, and they'll get all sorts of other bonuses and treats along the way as well. So pricing is all on the website, supralimina.com, and you can email me, and has my contact details, to schedule. I'll give you a link into my diary, and you can schedule your one-to-one, and we can have a chat about your career. So I'm so glad that you joined us today and invested your time. And for those who are watching the recording, thank you for watching as well, and for learning with us. Having a supportive network to learn with is massively important, and I hope that you enjoyed just the little snapshot, tiny little snapshot that you got of that today. So thank you.